Now we will finish Yirmiyahu Perek Zayin. Gazi nizreich vashlichi. Tear out your hair and throw it away. Usi'i al shifyam kina. And on the hilltops sing sad songs, lamentations. Ki ma'at Hashem. Because Hashem has become disgusted, v'yitosh, and abandoned at dor evrato, the generation of his anger. So now, after the account of how we have forsaken the Brit, and how we have, instead of following the Beit Hashem, we have offered sacrifice, instead of following good deeds and caring for the needy and the poor, we have brought sacrifices. And not only that, but whole families have gotten together to sacrifice to idols. So Hashem says that they should tear out their hair and they should sing sad lamentations because the burning wrath is coming. Ki asu b'nei Yehuda hara b'einai Hashem, because b'nei Yehuda have done what is evil in my eyes, says Hashem. Samu shikuseim b'bayit asher nikra shemi alav l'tamo. They have put their abominations in the house that I call my name to make it unholy. So we see here a reference once again at the end of the parak to the Bayit. Remember, Yirmiyahu is giving his prophecy in the Beit HaMikdash, and the Bayit that had always been called Hamakom Asher Yibchar Hashem, the place God will choose. Here, Abayit Asher Nikra Shemi Alav, the place God chose to call his name, the Beit HaMikdash. And what have they done? With their abomination, they have made it tameh, they've made it impure. They've taken their idols and literally put it into the house. Ubanu bamot hatofet. And they made the bamot of the tofet. We're going to explain in a moment what tofet is, but bamot is high places. They made high places in the tofet. Asher begay ben Hinnom, that is in the valley of Ben Hinnom. We're going to explain in a moment. You see a picture, we're going to elaborate on it. Lisrof et b'neim vet b'noteim ba'esh asher lo siviti v'lo alta libi. To burn, literally, they burned their sons and their daughters in the valley of Ben Hinnom. This is the rite of the Molech, which is a avodah zarah of that time, a horrible avodah zarah, where they would burn their children in fire. Something I never commanded. I never even thought of this. Now, what Hashem says, when I told Avram to sacrifice Yitzchak, I never thought that I never intended that Avram would finish the sacrifice and actually kill his son. It was just to show his dedication. But here, these people are sacrificing their children in fire, horrible, painful fire, and they're doing it to idols in the valley of Ben Hinnom, in the Tofet. So what is this Tofet? What is this valley of Ben Hinnom? So just to look a little bit, here's a little map, and you'll see, not a map, a picture that calls out, and you'll see how horrible this is, what we're talking about here, the Tofet. So this is the valley of Ben Hinnom, otherwise known as the Tofet, and you'll see in a moment why this is so horrible. First of all, you notice the proximity of this area. It's merely a stone's throw away from the Beit HaMikdash, which was obviously in Har Moriah, over there, right near the Jaffa Gate. The valley by the Jaffa Gate is what we're talking about. On the other side, you have Har HaZeitim over here. And so a stone throw away, they were giving sacrifices to idols. And what were they doing specifically? They were making high places and burning their children. And what the reason it's called Tofet is from the word tof, as you might know, means a drum. And so what would happen is they'd get into this ecstatic religious fervor. And they'd be banging the drums so loud purposely to drown out the cries of pain of the children who were literally being sacrificed and burned alive. I know this is a horrible image, but I'm giving it to you on purpose because you can understand how horrible this rite was. It wasn't only idolatry, but it was murder. It was horrible murder of their own children, a horrible, painful death, and literally it was in the shadow of the Beit HaMikdash that this sacrificial rite was going on. And Hashem says, how could I tolerate these abominations literally in my house? You think that I wouldn't exact punishment for this horrible acts? So now let's make it a little bit smaller, and let's talk a little bit about the rest of the parak. So what happened? Hashem says, well, days are coming. V'lo yamar od atofet b'gei gen Hinnom. They'll no longer call it the Tofet. They'll no longer call it the Valley of Ben Hinnom. It'll be renamed the Valley of Death, the Valley of Murder, the Valley of Killing, the Kavruat Betofet, and the graves in the Tofet, in this drummer's place, as it's being called, Me'ein Makom, where there's nowhere to go because of all the graves. So this is going to become a graveyard, and not a graveyard of the righteous like Har Zitim, but a graveyard of all the people who are going to be killed because of the battles, where all the Jews are going to die in this valley, as the punishment for the horrible acts they did. And what will happen? The corpses of this people will be food for the birds, and for the animals. We've seen this theme before in Yirmiyahu. They won't be afraid. The wild animals are going to run rampant on the dead bodies of the people. They won't even get a proper burial. And on that day, I will get rid of from the Arei Yehuda. I will stop from the Arei Yehuda and from the Chutzot Yerushalayim. So you see the word Shabbat here. Shabbat means to stop, as we rest on Shabbos. But here we're stopping. What are we stopping? Kol sason v'kol simcha, the sound of joy, rejoicing, the sound of singing. Kol chatan v'kol kala, the sound of a chatan and a kala, a bride and a groom. Kila charvati yeba aret, because the land will be destroyed. So we have this image, which you know from the wedding. Kol sason v'kol simcha, kol chatan v'kol kala. There it's a happy b'chutzot Yerushalayim and Arei Yehuda. But here Hashem is saying that I'm going to stop this, because the Arei Yehuda will be destroyed. There won't be any more happiness. There won't be any more brides and grooms and weddings and happy occasions. And this is the end of the prophecy of Perek Zayin. You can imagine why, as we're going to learn in Perek Chavav, in chapter 26, the people were so threatened and angry by the prophecy of Yirmiyahu. Sometimes it's hard to hear the truth.